It is now my pleasure to introduce today's co-keynote speakers, two Gold Star daughters. Brigadier General and Dr. Bannister is the Deputy Assistant Director, Education and Training, Defense Health Headquarters, Falls Church, Virginia. She is also the Assistant Surgeon General for Dental Services. In addition to her outstanding career of military service, which is detailed in your programs, we know her as Sharon. She is one of the yellow hat volunteers, like you've seen at the wall here before the ceremony started, who help visitors find names and understand more about the war and the memorial. Her sister, Rebecca Rusch, also comes to the wall to volunteer as often as she can. But if you read about her in your program, she's pretty hard to catch. She's a professional athlete and 7-time world champion cyclist, an author, a motivational speaker, a firefighter, and a movie star. The film Blood Road documented her 1,800-kilometer trip biking the Ho Chi Minh Trail into Laos to the site of her father's crash. Their father, Stephen Rusch, is remembered on Panel 2 West, listed as missing for more than 35 years. He was recovered and was buried at Arlington National Cemetery in 2007. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brigadier General Sharon Bannister and Rebecca Rusch.
First of all, to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, thank you for letting us speak tonight. Today. We've had very different journeys, but the destination was the same place. We really wanted to get to know our dad better. So a little background, he obviously said I'm serving the military uniform, also kind of gives that away. But I didn't come in because of my dad, and this isn't in my speech, but I'm going to share a little bit about how my journey started, because Rebecca's going to go over hers in detail as well. So I came in, I went to dental school, it wasn't on a scholarship. I just at the end decided that I would come in and serve. Mainly, full transparency, was for an AGD. It was for an extra year of school. Yes, I was a military brat, but when you look at the timing, we weren't military children for long. So I came in, we did our 2.5 weeks of officer training. And at the end, we always have a dining in. And for those that wear the uniform, dining in, you're in your mess dress, you're in your fancy uniform that does not have your name tag on it. And we got to the dinner, and the host for the evening was a Major General Billy McCoy. He was a 2-star previous F4 pilot, and he was going to be our host for the evening. And he kept looking at me from across the room. I was a little nervous. You know, what am I wearing wrong? I was a brand new captain, wanting to do everything that I could, the best I could. I was a little bit anxious watching him look at me, and he finally came over. I was with a group of brand new doctors, dentists, nurses, and he said, "Captain, what was your last name?" And I said, "Rusch." And he goes, "R-U-S-C-H." He goes, "I flew with your dad." And he said, "And I recognize you from pictures when you couldn't have been older than 6. Well, now the rest of the story, and you'll hear it in a second. Our dad was shot down 3 days before my 6th birthday. And so I realized I was entering into a fellowship that is way bigger than myself. And for those veterans, and if you don't mind, just all who have served or are serving, can you please stand up for a second so we can recognize you? We owe all of you so much, and for the Vietnam veterans, I know that you haven't always been thanked. One of the reasons I volunteer is because you need to be thanked. I want to be there. I want to hear your stories. And I know that the Vietnam War, you can talk about the war, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it. It's the names on the wall that make this memorial so incredibly special. Now, for those of you that do know me, and some of you have been forced to listen to my talks before, I am not a scripted person, but today is really important. I don't talk on Memorial Day. It's a hard day for me. I'd love to say that you get over it over time, but you really don't. The hurt is there all the time, and I want to make sure that what I say recognizes the 58,000 new number, 276 people on the wall. We recently went through an audit and cleaned up the number, so I had to remember, which is a little difficult. But I'd like to share a couple words with me, and then I'll hand it off to Rebecca to share her part of the journey, just to set the stage. In the early morning hours of March 7th, 1972, an F-42 ship took off from Da Nang Air Base, Republic of South Vietnam, on an armed reconnaissance mission over southern Laos. The number 2 aircraft, call sign Gunfighter 61, was cleared to attack 2 enemy trucks at 0655. Unfortunately, the target wasn't completely destroyed, so they were cleared for a second run. The lead aircraft lost Gunfighter 61 in the early morning haze. Enemy ground fire was heavy, and second later, the flight's lead saw a fireball over the great jungles of Laos. Of note, both targets were destroyed. On that hazy morning in March, First Lieutenant Carter Howell and my dad, First Lieutenant Stephen Rusch, proud airmen assigned to the 4th Tactical Fighter Squadron, 366 Tactical Fighter Wing, disappeared. Though visual, electronic, and photo reconnaissance searches continued for 3 days, on my 6th birthday, March 10th, the search concluded, and Lieutenant Rusch and Lieutenant Howell had their status changed to missing in action. No words can explain the years to follow. The uncertainty was always there. What if my dad had died on impact? What if he'd been captured and tortured? Or what if he got lost in the jungle, injured, alone? Years of dreams and many nights of tears, fading hope, and an aching heart that never heals. It's what the families, friends, and brothers and sisters in arms of MIA and POW, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines feel when they are left alone to create their own stories. In 2007, I was able to put an end to my story thanks to what is now known as Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. Back then, it was JPAC. An excavation performed decades after my dad's last mission provided closure to my unanswered questions. He was identified through dental remains. The dental remains were found at the crash site, and I was blessed to have the honor to go be his escort, bring him home from Hawaii to Arlington National Cemetery, where he rests today. Standing next to his casket with a full dress uniform impeccably prepared, placed inside, each ribbon in place, his rank shined, his name tag centered, I held his teeth in my hands and was able to cry the first tears in 35 years for a dad I hadn't had the opportunity to grow up with. There was no doubt anymore he had ended his short life of service on March 7th as his plane crashed into the slope of a hill just outside a small village in southern Laos. A beautiful, secluded jungle with a small stream running below. A tall, unique tree standing majestically at the riverbank, a spot my sister and I were able to visit a few years ago together. Though I wasn't prepared for the impact of the Hawaii experience, holding my dad's remains in my hands was life-changing for me. The team patiently waited until I could release him from my hands. And then they wrapped the teeth in a wool blanket before placing the carefully secured remains with full compassion into the casket under his uniform. As the top closed and the flag was draped on top, I knew my dad was really home. Mr. McKeague, I can't thank you enough for what you do for the families, bringing home our fallen heroes, and it really doesn't matter what time. I can't thank you, the whole team in Hawaii, F. Mayo up in Dover. It matters every day, and I keep you in my thoughts all the time. This year, we are fortunate to change an additional 9 crosses on the wall to diamonds, welcoming home 9 more of our heroes who gave the life for our country, several of the families who you were able to meet earlier today. But there's still many who have not returned and whose stories still need an end. As we pause today in remembrance for our fallen, including the 58,276 names on the wall behind us, I'd ask you to think of those who are still missing, and please keep them, their families, and their friends in your thoughts and hearts. Never let them be forgotten.
I'm Rebecca Rusch, Sharon's little sister. My career and my journey of healing took a very different path than Brigadier General Bannister. I'm a professional athlete and an explorer and a wanderer. I'm not career military, and for much of my life, I did not embrace or understand my dad's service. I simply felt the sting of his absence, and I blamed the demon of war. It's not easy for me to admit to you today, in this sacred place, on this meaningful day, that until recently, Memorial Day passed by each year with little fanfare or recognition from me. It's not that I didn't care or respect the loss of so many incredible men and women. It's just that I didn't want to commemorate the painful fact that my dad was gone. Like my sister, like so many of you, I had the same gaping hole in my life from a father who went missing. He was shot down when I was so young that I didn't remember him. So I really struggled to mourn a man that I never knew. Then the dreams started. Reoccurring dreams about meeting him one day and telling him all about my life. I would tell him who I was, what I'd done, what I'd become. The questions started too, the same questions my sister had. Was he alive? Did he suffer? Was he ever coming back? But we never talked about it. We suffered silently, privately, alone. In 2007, when his teeth were finally identified from the crash location, I did not find closure like so many people said would happen. Instead, when I learned that he died 47 years ago in the jungle near the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that's when my relationship with my dad really began. Knowing what happened to him that day was not an ending, but a beginning. Not closure, an opening. Dad's remains came home, and the symbol next to his name on this memorial was changed to a diamond. An Air Force service in Arlington welcomed him back. His journey was over, but mine was just beginning. My journey to finally get to know him, and so I went searching. As a professional athlete and cyclist, I went to find my dad and connect with him in the only way I knew how, by riding my bicycle to the place where he died. With maps in hand, I embarked on an arduous physical and emotional journey, a pilgrimage. I went to ride my bike 1,200 miles, the entire length of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, through Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The very path that the Vietnamese soldiers took nearly a half-century ago. The map coordinates that were recorded for his crash in 1972, it was like a magnetic force that was pulling me there. What I found there deep in the jungle were pieces of his F-4 Phantom plane. I found a beautiful old tree next to a stream along a hillside. I also found his spirit there. In that place, I felt close to him for the first time in my life. I could finally hear the words that he had written in his letters. I could finally hear the voice that he sang in his songs. He was speaking to me, and I was finally listening. I also found villagers who remembered the crash that day and had assisted in searching for his remains and respectfully burying the bodies of my dad and Lieutenant Carter Howell. They welcomed me and shared tears of emotion, even though we didn't speak the same language and supposedly we were on opposite sides of this conflict. I also found a missing piece of myself and a new understanding of Dad's message to me. He had brought me all the way there to teach me about healing and forgiveness and compassion. The Buddha says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That ride was 4 years ago, but the journey continues to open my eyes and my heart and strengthen my relationship with him. There is no longer a gaping hole in my life that was left by him. That space is being filled. I finally got to know my dad through the trail, through the villagers in Laos, through veterans who served alongside him, through my family who finally opened up and talked, and through total strangers who've also lost someone, strangers like you. I've come to understand and appreciate his service, my sister's service, and the service of so many other veterans. Even though he is physically not here, my dad is teaching me every day to forgive and to connect. So while I used to shy away from Memorial Day services or spending time at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial because it left me feeling empty and sad and hollow, now, that same powerful magnetic pull that took me all the way to Laos, it pulls me here. My dad draws me here, my sister draws me here, but also you, the sons, the daughters, the mothers, the fathers, the aunts, the uncles, you draw me here. We're all pulled here by an invisible force. I've come to understand and cherish the powerful bond that connects us through our shared stories. I've been humbled to volunteer at the wall and hear your stories, feel your embrace, and connect with you. I now realize I'm a part of an incredible family that I didn't know I had. Through the loss of one family member, I've gained thousands more. Dad and you have taught me how much our healing requires community and the necessity to reach outward instead of inward. Not closure, but opening. So now, I open my arms, my heart, to hear my dad's words and be part of this community, to be part of your family. And while we miss them all so much, we come here together to this place to feel their love, their words, and embrace each other as family. We no longer mourn alone, no longer in silence. My hope and my wish for you, this family, our family, is that you keep your ears and hearts open and listen. Hear their voices, their words, the teachings. Every single person on this wall, behind me, behind us, has spoken to you now and is still speaking to us, guiding us, teaching us. I can hear them. They are not forgotten because their spirit, their energy, their words, their loves, they are all part of this family now. In his very last letter home from the Vietnam War, my dad wrote these words: "If anything should happen to me, please don't let me die to Sharon and Becky." And then he signed off in his usual way with the words, "Be good, Steve." These words, "be good," they become my mantra, my guiding principle. How lucky I am to be able to stand here today with all of you and say, "Dad, I hear you loud and clear. And you did not die. You are alive in me and in my sister, Sharon." And I say to your family, your friends, your loved ones, and every single person on that wall, we hear you too. We are listening. We all take a different path on our journey to healing. My path was a 1,200-mile bike ride down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. My sister's 27 years of military service and sacrifice to the Air Force. You have your own journey. But ultimately, we all end up in the same place. We end up here, together, as part of this crazy, dysfunctional family that truly needs each other. Thank you for being part of our journey and for welcoming my sister and me into this family. I look forward to be part of your healing journey too. Be good.